Hi. Hi, Jean. Thanks for joining. I can't share, so I can at least give you a couple of things. You can hear me okay? I'm trying. What I'm doing actually is a test. I am testing an Ethernet connection to my access point. Because as you all know that follow me, I have a very rural connection, and it was wireless, and my connection was awful in and out. So I've got this new, setup all over here. But I thought, you know what? Let's talk about this topic, and I'll do this, and I will continue. Because now I know you can hear me. And I also want to tell you, I have to be cognizant of the fact that when these go to YouTube, a lot of times it confuses those people because this is live and I'm interacting with a studio, with the studio audience. I'm interacting with you guys. So keep that in mind. So this article, are we headed for near-term human extinction? Sounds very scary. But this is really good information that I thought the author did a really good job on. His name is Zach Reuter, Ruiter, and he's written a few articles for this. One of them are Pigs People Too. He wrote an article called How Toronto Pig Saves Anita Krajnak, inspired by Tolstoy, mobilized animal rights activists worldwide in 2016. So he has some credibility behind him, I thought. But more importantly, the article was easy to read for those of us who are not studying this every day, who are not scientific-minded people, but want to understand what is the feedback. Honest to God, that one word. When I first was getting ready to interview Dr. Guy McPherson, and I was getting into all of these things about climate change, I did not know what a feedback was or what a feedback loop was. And I'm sure a lot of you don't have time to read all the stuff that I read. And I wanted to know, but this article just came out and I thought, let's give it a whirl. So he goes into, and we're going to talk about just the beginning. He talks about the warning that 15,000 climate change scientists came out with last week, and the warning to humanity, raising the specter of potentially catastrophic climate change from burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and agricultural production, just among other things. More than 15,000 scientists from 184 countries endorsed the caution, which comes on the 25th anniversary of a letter released by the Union of Concerned Citizens Scientists in 1992, advising that a great change in our stewardship of the earth and the life on it is required if vast human misery is to be avoided. I publish something about this stuff. I share articles about this stuff on Environmental Coffee House every day. But I don't know if all of you get a chance to read this, to read everything. So here we go. We know about the Paris Agreement. He talks about the Paris Agreement, about the 2 degrees Celsius that would avoid dangerous climate change. And none of the major industrialized countries that signed the agreement are currently even on track to meet the non-binding targets. So we also have the Trump administration indicating that the United States will withdraw from the agreement, but it takes time for that. Then he talks about the study in a peer-reviewed journal, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America, claimed biological annihilation via the ongoing 6th mass extinction. The 6th mass extinction is underway, and that all signs point to ever more powerful assaults on biodiversity in the next 2 decades. And it does paint a dismal picture of human life and everything else. And I don't know. I can't say it enough to try to get minds opened. and understanding everything. So runaway climate change is nonlinear. Shifts can be exponential. You have to understand a little bit about how math replicates itself. You know, how, let's say you talk about something in degrees Celsius, like the Arctic and the warming, and it's always in Celsius. It's always measured in my God, I'm having a good day. It's always monitored in Celsius. And as Howard Lee wrote in The Guardian in August, geographically fast buildup of greenhouse gas linked to warming, rising sea levels, widespread oxygen-starved ocean dead zones, and ocean acidification are fairly consistent across the mass extinction events. And those same symptoms are happening today as a result of human-driven climate change. I can't say it enough. Runaway climate change is non-linear. Shifts can be exponential, like I said, abrupt and massive due to climate change feedbacks, which is what we're going to talk about, which can amplify and diminish the effects of climate change. Here are 5 you need to know about. So let's go for this. And good morning, Dennis, before I go. Good morning, Dennis. And let's see, good morning, everybody. Everybody here. There's a lot of comments, but here we go. Oh, hi, Lucas. Lucas, I will show your comment before I start. Remember, the words have power. So when we insist in the end of the world, perhaps we are accelerating the process. Of course, the problem is really big, but nature is just telling us we need to change our way of life. I'm not making that decision here for any of you. We're only going through what these are, as per this article. Number 1, climate lag. Temperature increases lag by about a decade, according to NASA's Earth Observatory. Just a speeding car can take some time to stop after the driver hits the brakes. The Earth's climate systems may take a while to reflect the change in its energy balance. According to a NASA-led study released in July 2016, almost 1/5 of the global warming that has occurred in the past 150 years has been missed by historical records due to quirks in how temperatures were recorded. Adding the climate lag to the current level of global temperature increase would take us past the 2-degree Paris Agreement climate target within a decade. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to educate you. Not only will melting Arctic ice raise global sea levels, it will allow the Earth to absorb more heat from the sun because ice reflects sun rays, while blue open water absorbs it. One study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America estimates the extra heat absorbed by dark waters of the Atlantic in the summer would add the equivalent of another 25% to global greenhouse gas emissions. That was pretty simple. 2, an ice-free Arctic. Dr. Peter Wadhams of the Polar Ocean Physics Group at Cambridge University told The Independent more than a year ago that the central part of the Arctic and the North Pole could be ice-free within 1 to 2 years. Not only will melting Arctic ice raise global sea levels, it will, I read this already. I don't know what is going on today, but it will reflect the sun's rays. So we've got the climate lag, and then we've got the ice-free Arctic, and now we have a 50 gigaton methane burp. Dr. Natalia Shakova, who I've put on some of their information onto Environmental Coffee House before, of the University of Alaska Fairbanks International Arctic Research Center, has warned that a 50 gigaton burp or pulse of methane from thawing Arctic permafrost between the East Siberian Arctic shelf is highly possible at any time. Methane is a greenhouse gas much more potent than carbon dioxide. A 50 gigaton burp would be the equivalent of roughly 2/3 of the total carbon dioxide released since the beginning of the industrial era. It's kind of like climate change 101. And a lot of people have done that, and I'm doing it. using this guy's words. 4, accelerated ocean acidification. The world's oceans are carbon sinks that sequester a third of the carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere. The carbon dioxide emitted, in addition to that which is produced naturally, has changed the chemistry of seawater. The carbon in the oceans converts into carbonic acid, which lowers pH levels and makes the water acidic. As of 2010, the global population of phytoplankton, the microscopic organisms that form the basis of the ocean's food web, has fallen by about 40% since 1950. Phytoplankton also absorb carbon dioxide and produce half of the world's oxygen. The accelerating loss of ocean biodiversity and continued overfishing may result in a collapse of all species of wild seafood by 2048, according to a 2006 study published in the journal Science. There may be something else newer, but this is what I'm reading from because it's a good little overview. Number 5, from global warming to global dimming. I didn't know what global dimming was either. The Canadian government recently announced plans to phase out coal-fired electricity generation by 2030. But at the same time as warming the planet, pollution from coal power plants, airplanes, and other sources of industrial soot, industrial soot, aerosols, and sulfates are artificially cooling the planet by filling the atmosphere with reflective particles, a process known as global dimming. I'm not on my game today. My mouth is it's like everything is a tongue twister. I guess it's exciting to read it because it's all in one little place, very easy for all of us to understand. Airplanes, big thing, right? For example, release condensation trails or contrails that form cloud cover that reflects the sun. The effects of global dimming are best evidenced by a 2 degrees Celsius temperature increase in North America after all commercial flights were grounded for 3 days following the attacks of 9/11. So people say that if we just shut off fossil fuel, we would be in trouble, because we would lose that dimming effect. And I'm not even going to go into the chemtrail discussion or the geoengineering discussion. Basically, I thought that this article had a few takeaways. Namely, out of control climate change means feedback mechanisms may accelerate beyond any capacity or human control. The occurrences discussed in this article are 5 of some 60 known weather-related phenomenon, which can lead to what climate scientist James Hansen has termed the Venus syndrome, which it's where the oceans would boil and the surface temperature of the Earth could reach 462 degrees Celsius. Along the way, humans could expect to die in resource wars, starvation due to food systems collapse, or lethal heat exposure. Given all that remains unknown, and what is at stake with climate change, is it irresponsible to rule out the possibility of human extinction in the coming decades or sooner? Now, this gentleman, he writes for a Toronto news, a publication. And we know that we've seen other things that are coming out in all kinds of magazines, but is it waking anybody up? Joy says facts are important, but facts alone don't change behavior. We need to reach people's hearts. This TED Talk starts the conversation. All right, cool. That's very good. Thank you for sharing. And it'll be in the comments. Thank you, Joy. Thank you so very much. Lucas says, Jim Hansen expects technology to begin capturing CO2 massively. Again, that could be, and that's beyond the scope of today. Today, I simply wanted to relay what feedbacks were to those that may not understand when all those things I share on here and the videos are talking about feedbacks. And if I didn't know what they were a year ago, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that don't. Climate lag, ice-free Arctic, 50 gigaton methane burp, accelerated ocean acidification, and from global warming to global dimming. So those things are enough. And I I thought going over some of those today would be decent and test my internet connection. So it looks to me like maybe it's a good one. I don't know. We'll see after if I have to review this, I'll look back at it. Do we have any more comments? Jean says, so the next decade should be a doozy. We don't know. And for the young people, I'm not going to do the hopium thing today. I'm not. Today is pure facts from this article. If anybody wants to dispute them, I welcome the discussion. But to me, this is what is happening. And I don't want to be in a frightening mode today. I wanted to be pragmatic and discuss it, and I hope that it helped. And the article will be discussed and published onto the site. So you can discuss it amongst yourselves in the article when that goes on to Environmental Coffee House. Who said, let's see. Jean says, we think we can control the environment. We are fools. Well, I feel like I'm buckled in for the ride. And one of the things that I constantly wrestle with is it worth it to, and I'm sure a lot of you are, prep, to be a prepper, so to speak? Can we outlive any of this? Can I make the house substantially more accommodating for any more tornadoes? Should I get solar power to see if it brings us through a time? Is anything worth doing? These are the discussions I would like to have going forward. Jim Hansen, oh yes, we had said that already, that the carbon capturing, and for the young people that are looking at that technology, get involved and do. I always say that. We can't sit back and just say, well, the science says this is going to happen. And so we're not going to do anything. We're just going to love every day. Well, fine. That's one way of looking at it. I don't agree with that, but that's one way of looking at it. I think anything that can be done is worth it. And the last video I put up with Paul Beckwith, he talked about geoengineering. And he talked about the fact that if it's going to happen, he says, why not? We're screwed if we do, and we're screwed if we don't. We just have to pick which way we want to be screwed. I'm sorry. I don't like to do this, but I wanted to show you and talk about feedbacks, and I really want this dialogue to keep going and sharing. It is the impossible conversation, as my friend says, Dean Walker. It is. So today we had the feedback loops, and I thank you for all coming. And I hope that when I transfer this to YouTube today, I have so many things to do today, that they get it. And Paul is right. She's saying, let's see. Yeah, Jean says Paul's right. It's sad, but there's a lot of people that don't share these feelings. And I'm not saying that you all have to run out and be doomists, like my husband calls me, Mrs. Doom. Lucas says, I'm clear in my explanations. Not always, Lucas. Not always. I learn from those who give me feedback, and people give me feedback on YouTube a lot, and I take it. So I will end with, please discuss, share, and invite. Thank you. And the stream looked good. So maybe I've solved all my issues, and now we can do interviews. Interesting, really interesting interviews that will captivate, and maybe will stay in a nice video stream. The next, I have December 8th, I have Ian Golden, who's running against Tom Reed in the 23rd District in Western New York to get a climate denier out of Congress. And there are lots of things to do. Got to do something every day. And I'll be back. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Share for me. And thank you for helping. And thank you for being with us. Peace.